Welcome to another session of Mastering AWS. In this session, we are going to cover regions, availability zones, local zones, and wavelength zones. So these are the very critical topics of the cloud computing, and you can say this is the base of your AWS cloud computing because even either you go for the designing of an architecture for a client, or maybe when you are configuring the different resources, so for that, we select the different regions, availability zones, and then local zones and wavelength zones as well, according to our requirement and based on the applications, right? For the high availability and to get the optimum performance based on the application that you are using. Okay, so the two understanding of all these concepts are very important, and I'm going to explain everything in a very easy way so that you can get every concept properly. Okay, so let us begin with the Amazon data centers, okay? Because all these terms are specifically related with the data centers and the resources that we have in the data centers. Okay, so what are the data centers? We have a great good discussions on the data centers in the couple of previous sessions, right? So in a single line, you can conclude it as the Amazon data centers are hosted in multiple location geography worldwide, right? So this is a worldwide leader in the cloud services. They have a multiple data centers span across the world in the different countries or different geography. Okay, so all these data centers, which is span across the world, okay, they are divided into the different terms that is called the AWS regions, availability zones, local zones, and wavelength zones. Okay, so you can consider all these terms specifically derived for the multiple data centers that is across the world of the Amazon, along with the partners of the Amazon as well, right? Plus the kind of services running on the data centers. Okay, so let us have a look on all these key terms to understand it properly. Now, first begin with the three keywords, which is your geography, regions, and availability zones. Okay, it's very straightforward. Geography refers to the distinct physical locations, or you can say the countries or territories. Okay, so for example, United States and India, right? These are the two different countries. So these countries referred as the different geography. Okay, so specifically in terms of AWS, if you heard that geography is the term that is coming in the discussion or in any of the document, then you can consider it as a country. Right. Now, when we talk about the region, so region in a geography is a specific named geographic area where AWS hosts a set of data centers, right? So now we have a country like United States or India, right? And now in that specific country, the AWS has the different data centers, right? So these specific regions or the areas where the AWS hosts the data centers is called the region. For example, if I talk about United States, so there could be three regions in the United States. The one is the Virginia, second is Ohio, third is the California. Okay. Similarly, if I say about the India, okay, so in India, the first region could be Hyderabad and second could be here Mumbai. This is again based on where the data center of the AWS are exist. Okay, so there could be the data centers in Hyderabad and Mumbai today in India, and tomorrow maybe they are expanding the data centers and it will come up in the few more states in the India, and similarly in United States, and similarly in the other countries as well. Okay, this they are keep updating their data centers, they are building their data centers to expand their business, right? And these details are keep updating in the AWS websites as well, as soon as all the different geography or regions are added in the AWS, right? So now one thing is very clear, or not specifically one, three things are very clear here. Different geographies represent the different states, right? And when we talk about the regions, so regions are specifically the different states that you have in a country, right? So in a nutshell, this geography you can refer as a country, region you can refer as a different states in the country. Two terms, sorry, not three, right? Now let us talk about what exactly is the availability zone. So now you can see the region is derived from the geography. So similarly, this availability zone is going to be derived from the regions. That means from the state. Okay. So now let us me explain you with a simple diagram. Okay. So this is what we have learned. We have a two geography, United States, and second is India, right? And in United States, we have three regions. Similarly, in India, we have two regions, right? Now, each AWS region has a minimum of two availability zones, which are essential, or you can say essentially independent data centers within the regions. Now, one thing is very clear here. These availability zones refer to the data centers. That means we have the data centers in the availability zones. Okay. And each region has minimum of two availability zones. That means in each region, you will have at least two availability zones that is for the high availability and failover. And what exactly we have in the availability zones? We have the physical data centers. Okay. So now here, if you see in the diagram, in the United States geography, we have three different regions, and each region we have two data centers. You can see here, minimum two data centers. It can be three, four, five, six, more than that. Okay, and just keep increasing as the AWS is expanding the business. Okay, so but for to avoid any kind of a failure or to provide you the better performance and failures, okay, you have minimum two data centers, okay, or you can say minimum two availability zones in each and every region, right? So now third term is also clear. The first we have discussed about the geography, which is the country, specific country. Then we discuss about the regions. So regions is specific states inside the country. And in the different states, we have the data, multiple data centers. Okay. And all these data centers are referred as availability zones. Okay. And what we have learned, then each region has minimum two availability zones to provide you the high availability, to provide you the failover, to provide you the scalability, right? And what is the concept of all this? We have discussed in detail in the very first session. High availability, failover, scalability, right? So next is, let me explain you about again. So the first what we have discussed about the geography, which is the country. Then we discuss about the regions, which is the different states within a particular geography, or you can say within a particular state. And then in each and every region, we have the multiple data centers and at least two to provide you the high availability, failure, and scalability. And this availability zone is referred as the data centers, right? So now hope you are clear on the geography, which is a specific country, you can say. Then the region, so region is the different states that we have in a particular geography. And then availability zones, which is the multiple data centers we have in each and every region, or you can say each and every state. And we have multiple availability zones for the high availability, failover, and scalability, and for multiple regions. Okay, so this is the link of the different regions that is there as of now currently in the AWS. You can go to this link, or you can simply search for the AWS region in the your browser. Okay, you will get a link. You can go to there, and then here you can see the different regions, geography, data center that is available with the AWS as of today. So now, if you see here, the last column is representing the geography, right? So that means this is the country. So now here you can see that United States, United States, United States, and United States, right? So in United States, we have four different regions. The first is North Virginia, then Ohio, North California, and Oregon. These are the four different regions in the United States. And if you go to the availability zones, which is also referred as data center, then you can see in North Virginia, AWS has six data centers or six availability zones. Similarly, in Ohio, there are 3 data centers. North California, there are 3 data centers, and Oregon, 4 data centers. Now, if similarly, if you refer here, the count is more than two. Okay, it is at least minimum three or more than three somewhere, right? That means the the AWS has multiple data centers in a particular region or in a particular state, and with each of the region there is a corresponding code. So this code is very important to note because during multiple kind of a configurations, and for example when we do the command line interface configuration of AWS to access the resources from the command line, okay, we have to provide this particular code which is associated with the particular region. Okay, for example, if you are going to create your resources, for example, virtual machines you wanted to create in an United States, and specifically in the United States, you wanted to create in the North Virginia region. Okay, so you have to select the corresponding particular code to reach to that particular location. It is very important to understand all these concepts, as I said, because most of the time when you are working on the AWS, okay, we first select the geography from the management console. Okay, and then we start working on the different kind of resources. Okay, so many time it is happened that you will, when you will log into your amendment management console, and suddenly you will feel that, oh, where is my resources? I had few virtual machines and nothing is displaying there. Okay, the reason is that their geography will be different. Maybe you have configured your resources in the India, and next time when you log in mistakenly, maybe the region has been selected as Japan. So once the region is selected as Japan and you have configured everything in India, okay, and then you will go to the instances or different tabs, you will not see your resources because your resources are there in the India region, right? So when you log into management console, make sure first to select the proper geography, okay, and the proper advice is to select the geography which is nearby to you, okay, to avoid any kind of a latencies. So as much as the data center is near to you, you will get a optimum performance of your applications, right? So this is the concept of your AWS regions, data centers, geography. Okay, and you can see all these regions from the management console as well. You can log into your management console which we have created in the previous session. Okay, and the top right corner you will see a draw box. Okay, from there you can select the region. Okay, once you will click on this one, it will list all the regions. And once you will click on a particular region, okay, that means after that, whatever the resources that you are going to configure in the AWS will be going to configure inside that particular region, right? Now configuring high availability in region. So now how we configure the high availability? So one thing is very clear. We have multiple data centers in the regions, okay, which is also referred as the availability zones. I am referring as availability zone 1, availability zone 2, and availability zone 3. That means I am referring 3 data centers, right? So if I'm going to create my resources, for example, I'm going to create 3 virtual machines, right? So to avoid any kind of failures, okay, what I will do when I'm going to create 3 virtual machines, so I am going to select all the 3 different availability zones that I have in my region. Let me explain you again. What we have learned in the previous slide, the availability zones refer as the data centers in a particular region. That means in a particular city. Let me give an example. For example, I have the Mumbai city, or you can say the Mumbai region I have selected in the AWS console for creating the resources because I am in India. Right. Now my requirement is to create 3 virtual machines. Okay. So now we know that in Mumbai we have 3 availability zones. That means we have a 3 data centers inside the Mumbai. Right. So if I'm going to create 3 virtual machines, so what I will do when I'm going to configure the virtual machines, for the first virtual machines, I am going to select the availability zone 1, or you can say data center 1. For second virtual machine, I can select the availability zone 2, which is data center 2. And for third virtual machine, I can select the availability zone 3, that means which is the data center 3. So by this way, I am configuring a very high availability domain or the architecture, because if suppose that availability zone 1, which is the data center 1, is crashed due to any regions, then you still have applications running on 2 different regions, and even in a worse condition, second data center is also crashed, you have still application running on the third data center, right? So there's the associated code of each and every data center. Okay, when you configure the resources, for example, I'm going to create an EC2 machine. If you are not going to select explicitly, it will automatically going to select the different availability zones for you. Okay, so it is very important for you to look for all these configurations when you are suppose you are creating a EC2 machine or virtual machine. Okay, and what all the availability zones you are going to create it. Okay, so this is the way how we ensure the high availability in a region by selecting the different availability zones for the different resources, right? And why we discuss, because as I said, if one of the data center or availability zone would crash, or maybe not it is not the complete data center, there could be a power failure, network failure, some hardware issues in the data center or in that particular availability zone. So your application will be accessible from the other availability zones, right? So what we have covered so far, we have covered the what is geography, what is the region, then availability zone, and then how we configure the highly available architecture with the help of availability zones, right? So now let us talk about the AWS local zones, which is also referred as mini data centers. Okay, so run applications that require single digit millisecond latency or local data processing by bringing AWS infrastructure to your end users and business centers, meet data residency requirements for regulatory and compliance sensitive workload. Now, what does it mean that you have a multiple kind of applications? Okay, some of the applications you can avoid the latencies. For example, if you are running the bad jobs, you are running some offline reports. For that, you really don't worry about the latencies. Okay, but yes, there are many business critical applications. For that, you can't uh, ignore even the milliseconds of a latency. Okay, so these kind of a requirement, what is the solution? And what is the solution means? Let me explain you with example. For example, you have a geography India. In India, we have two data centers, Hyderabad and Mumbai. They are the two states, right? But there are multiple states in India. Okay, those are very far from these two different states. Okay, and in Hyderabad and in Mumbai, we have a multiple availability zones, or you can say data centers, where we have deployed our applications. Right. Now, suppose that a user who is accessing the application from Delhi, either from the Mumbai data center or either from the Hyderabad data center. Now, if you look for the distance between Hyderabad and Delhi, it is almost 1561 kilometer, and from Mumbai, it is almost 1409 kilometer. Okay, so now what will happen whenever this user is going to access the application, either from the Hyderabad data center or Mumbai data center, it has to reach these kind of a kilometers for each and every request that is getting initiated by the user who is sitting in the Delhi. And Delhi is not only specific one state, there are multiple other states and union territories in India. Those are very far from these two different availability zones or data centers, right? So in that case, how you can avoid the latency due to this? For that, the AWS has created the mini data centers, or also referred as the local zone. Okay, so this is again a specific data center, like we have the availability zones, okay, which is created in the multiple cities and referred as local zones. And why it is local mini data centers? Because it is not a full-fledged data center, but yes, many of the critical AWS applications and hardwares are running there, okay, to provide the low latency to the end users who are accessing the applications from that particular location. So now in that case, what will happen? The user who is trying to access the application from the Delhi, instead of connecting directly to the Hyderabad or Mumbai data centers, the user will connected to the local zone, which is the mini data center. Okay, and this user is going to get the optimum performance because that user is connected to the local data center, right? So this is the concept of the mini data centers, or also referred as the local zones. So again, you can go to the Amazon website, or you can search in the Google for the your AWS local zones locations, and then you will see this tab where you can see the different availability zones available, or you can see it from the management console as well. Okay, you can log into your management console, and very first thing, as I said, you have to first select the region, in which region you are going to create the resources. So for example, I'm in India, so I have selected the Mumbai region, right? And once you click on the Mumbai region, and then we have multiple services. So here, this is specifically tab for the EC2. So the EC2 is the Elastic Cloud 2. This is the option for the compute where we create the multiple virtual machines. Okay, so you can go to EC2, and once you click on the settings button inside the EC2, and then you will get the multiple options tabs here. You click on the zones. Okay, and here you can see the zone type. These are the availability zones. These are the local zones, right? So here you can see this is the availability zone. Okay, and these are the local zones. So suppose I'm setting in Delhi. Okay, so I will connect to my local zone, which is a Delhi, and this is referred as a mini data center, right? And again, other option is to manage your local zones, because many of the local zones are not enabled by default. You have to opt for that. You have to enable that one. So you can select your region, and then you can click on the manage local zones, which is at the lowest corner. Okay, click on the manage local zones, and there you will again get this screen where you can see all of the different options. You can select the particular local zone. Okay, and then you can enable it if you want to use it, right? So far we have covered all the critical keyword and concepts, okay, related with the AWS. Now the last one is the AWS wavelength zones. This is again referred as mini AWS data center. Okay, so just in the previous slide, we have learned about the local zones, which is also referred as mini data center. And now what I'm saying, this AWS wavelength zone is also referred as AWS, that mini AWS data center. So what is the difference in terms of the local zone? So the difference is this particular AWS data center is inside a telecom operator facility near you. So that means it is not an independent mini data center of the AWS or the from the partners. Okay, it is a separate mini data center which is established inside your telecom operator facilities near you, or you can say the telecom providers. Okay, for example, we have the different telecom providers like Orange, SK Telecom, Vodafone, Verizon, KDDI, British Telecom, Bell. Specifically, when come to India, we have Airtel, we have Jio. These are the telecom service providers, right? And now, if you know that if we suppose that there is a tower of a particular telecom service provider, and if our home is near to this particular tower, then you get a very good bandwidth, right? And as soon as you go away from the tower, your bandwidth started reducing, right? So that means if you are near to the telecom tower, you are going to get a good bandwidth. So considering the same concept, AWS has facilitated and configured the multiple data centers inside the telecom operator facilities. That means wherever you have the any of the telecom service providers data centers for their applications, right? There they have the AWS can configure their own mini data centers, which is referred as the wavelength zones. And what are the benefit we are going to get it? Because these data centers are inside the same premise where you have the telecom operator providers data center. Okay, so the applications or the end user who are going to access the applications via mobile application, which is connecting to the telecom tower, for example, for 5G network, okay, they are going to get a very great performance. So instead of connecting to a particular region, the users are directly connecting to the data center, which is close to your tower. So that is drastically going to increase the performance or experience of the end users in terms of the latency, right? So this is example. Let us say that you are in Delhi in India. You are connected to Airtel 5G network. You are using a mobile app that require very fast server response. If the application connect to the AWS Mumbai region, your data travel through around 1400 kilometer, which add maybe the latency, right? So as I said, if you are in Delhi and your data center or availability zone in Mumbai, it has to travel more than 400 kilometer. okay, which can degrade the performance of the applications, right? So if in this situation, if you are connecting to your local data center, which is inside the premise of a particular network service provider instead of the region, okay, so you are going to get a good performance, right? So, but if AWS is a wavelength zone inside Airtel local 5G data center in Delhi, your data only travels a few kilometers, resulting in less than 10 milliseconds latency, right? So now what is happening? I am in Delhi. So instead of connecting to the region in Mumbai, I am going to connect to the local data center, which is residing in the same area where I have my service network service provider, or you can say my mobile service network provider. So in case of Airtel, this is the Airtel tower, and AWS has established the data center, mini data center in the same premise. So instead of connecting to the Mumbai, which is 400 kilometers far away, the user will connect to the local data center, which is in the same premise as the network service provider, or you can say the communication service provider. So the latency will be very less. So if you are connecting to the Mumbai directly, the latency could be 550 to 100 millisecond. But if you are connecting to the local data centers of the telecom providers, then it could be hardly 10 millisecond or less than that one. So that's the power of having mini AWS data center, or you can say the wavelength zones nearby embedded inside the telecom networks, right? So what is AWS wavelength? AWS wavelength bring AWS services to the edge of telecom networks like 5G network, closer to end user or devices to reduce the overall latency. And you can think of it as a mini AWS data center, but residing inside the telecom operator facilities near you. And why we need, when you are playing game or running an app on your phone that connect to AWS in different city or country, there can be a delay or the latency. So the wavelength, the app connect to nearby 5G telecom site where AWS has a wavelength zone, giving you the super fast response as low as 10 milliseconds. So now we have a different kind of applications. Okay, so to get the optimum performance, we have the mini data centers. But on top of that, if you have certain kind of applications like today we have the gaming applications, real-time VR applications, IoT applications, right? There are multiple kind of applications. They cannot afford the milliseconds of a delay. You suppose that if you're playing in a game, and if you're getting a certain kind of zigzags or delay in your gaming experience, then there is no meaning of this game, right? You are not going to play again or run this game again if you're getting a certain kind of a response, right? So similarly, there are multiple applications that doesn't afford the single millisecond of a delay. So for that, this wavelength zone is very important. If you're still confused on that, still you are have not the clarity, let me explain you with a diagram in easy way. Okay, so here in the diagram on the left hand side, this is the AWS region. So this is the traditional AWS region. For example, this is a Mumbai region, and where we have hosted many of the AWS services. Okay, and data travels from here to the edge using the transit network, and in between we have a transit network whenever the user access the applications. Right. Now here on the right hand side, we have a localized in-country infrastructure. So this is where AWS wavelength operate. That means inside the infrastructure of a telecom service provider, also called the CSP, which is a communication service provider. Now suppose that this is the localized in-country infrastructure. This is a wavelength zone. So this is the tower of the particular telecom service provider. Now, wavelength box. So this is the wavelength box which you're seeing here. Okay, it acts as a mini AWS zone deployed inside the telecom operator facility. So this is completely the telecom service provider premise, right? This is the tower, and here we have the AWS wavelength, which is acting as a mini data center where the AWS has deployed the multiple applications. Right. So if you run any of the application, it bring compute very close to the mobile user, reducing latency. So now what is happening in that case? This AWS wavelength is inside the tower telecom provider premise. Right. And this is your AWS data center inside same premise. And CSP here, this CSP, this is the 5G mobile network operated by the telecom provider, mobile devices connected to it. So now this is the network of the 5G. This is attached to my AWS wavelength, right? Because they are inside the same premise. Okay. Now it physically connected to the AWS wavelength zone with the same building or nearby, because this is in the same building. So this CSP network this mobile network is physically connected to the AWS Wavelength data center because they are in the same premise, right? To provide the great enhanced performance. Okay. So now this is your mobile device which you are going to use to access your different kind of applications. So user smartphones or IoT devices connect to the mobile network. Data flow through the CSP network to the wavelength zone instead of going all the way the main AWS region. So now when a user is trying to access the application from the mobile devices, so instead of going directly to a particular region, it is going to connect to the AWS wavelength of your operator directly, right? So now if what about other users, not the mobile users? For example, you are connected with the fiber or Wi-Fi enterprise LAN. Okay, so that traffic does not go to the CSP 5G network because 5G network is completely different, which we access from the mobile, right? So in that case, if it is a situation where you have a fiber cables, Wi-Fi, enterprise LANs, so in these particular cases, you are still going to have to connect to the different regions or maybe to the local zones, or you can say the mini data centers, right? And then transit to AWS region. So as I said, if you are on the different network, then it has to travel to the regions, and this is going to travel to regions from the transit network. What is transit network? That means if suppose that you are accessing from the Delhi, you are going to connect to the Mumbai data center, then you have to travel from Delhi to Mumbai. So in between, there is a network of the telecom providers, okay, which is called the transit network. Correct. And similar to the regions availability zones, can go to the AWS website and then you can look for the different wavelength locations. Okay, to make sure that if it is in your city or not, if you would like to utilize this one, you can just look for the different kind of a telecom service providers, and then you can look for the different wavelength zones. Right. So this cover all the critical important topics. What is geography? What are the regions, what are the availability zones, what are the local zones, and what are the wavelength zone, and what is the importance of that specifically when we design the architecture of the AWS and when we create the resources. Thank you.